Hey, Paul, how's it going?
Doing great, Randy. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. Really excited to have Paul Salamanca on today. He is co-founder and CEO of the Top One Percenter Academy. And our title topic is coaching skills. So definitely looking forward to this, Paul.
Likewise, and I'm happy that your background is a little blurry over your left shoulder there. I'm a huge Knicks fan. There you go. Yeah.
The Celtics. Do we have a basketball team here? The Celtics?
I think so. Yeah. I think you set the bar pretty high, so we'll see.
There you go. Any Knicks guys on the Olympic team?
I don't believe so. We deliberately are resting our team for next year.
Was that a rest or a rest?
Rest.
There you go. All right. So we're sponsored today by Humantic AI, who's the personality profiling sponsor of Sales Community, and is always brought to you by Sales Community. For those that are members, thanks. For those that are not, Tucker will throw on a free link. Lots of great content and resources available there. So by way of introduction, Paul lives in Chester, New Jersey. He's got 3 awesome girls he was bragging to me about beforehand, age 6, 11, and 13. So you certainly have your hands full there.
Oh, yeah. Surrounded by beautiful women all the time.
There you go. And then we're trying to figure out how we first met. We think it was with Bill Hogan when you were at Security Scorecard, and we're doing some account mapping, I think, right?
That's correct. That's when I realized, who is this Randy guy who knows everybody in the world? I said, I have to get close to this, to Randy. So thanks for your help there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not sure about that. But all right. So helping me with the introduction from our working together, you've certainly been extremely hands-on. You're a great sales leader. And then as we'll get into enough, you're so passionate about the coaching side that you decide to actually do that as a business, but certainly highly regarded in the industry. Great customer relationships, great partner relationships, and helping with a lot on the charity side as well. So from some others that know you even better, Tom Bocard says, Paul is hungry, driven, thoughtful, and empathetic entrepreneur and a human being, continuously selflessly looking to develop himself with the mindset of how he can support and help others prosper and sell more. Bill Hogan says, University of Arizona favorite son, consummate new age sales leader with a blend of old school work ethic and get it done attitude with modern skills and approach, relatable to today's sellers and customers. Gotta love a leader whose hobby has been training sales professionals, honing their craft. He's so good at it and is so passionate about it that he's decided to do it full time. And father of 3 young girls, boater, sneaky evolving golf game, and love the guy. So
best 20 handicapper you will ever find. So I'm actually shooting a lot better than my handicap now. So I think now is the time to win some money, Randy. You want to play?
There you go. I'm actually, I think, at 20.5. But do you find with the new handicap system that you can kind of move up or move down a lot faster than what you used to?
I haven't moved down in recent years, so we will see. I'll let you know. Maybe in a year, I can answer that question.
Yeah. All right. Great. Are you going to that Bills outing in Rockville Center?
I am. Yeah, I think we'll be sponsoring that too.
Oh, great. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out logistically from Boston, not necessarily the easiest place to get to Monday morning, but
it's always a great time. Bill does a great job.
We'll figure it out. So jumping into the questions. So Bill had mentioned University of Arizona, I think 2002. And your first job out of college was Tango?
First job out of college was Tel Data Control that was acquired by Tango. So okay. Yes. And even my first real job was during college. I would go door to door, first with a prototype because my dad said, hey, grades aren't doing the best. Why don't you come home, get closer to, I said, Dad, give me a second. Let me figure this out. I'll tell you what, I will not only do better at school, but I will also start my own business. Let me just think of an idea first. So I started going door to door to these local businesses and said, okay, I'm going to promote you to dorms, fraternities, sororities. And within 4 years, I started getting Domino's Pizza, Papa John's, New York Life Insurance, trying to recruit, So that became awesome. So that was my first real experience of sales, which then grew to a national company.
Awesome. Very cool. And from Tom Murphy, we have great event at the Links. So thanks for that, Tom. And good reminder for me. So for those watching or listening, feel free to chime in with any comments and especially any questions as well. We got a great expert here. So then maybe kind of just briefly go through your impressive career from there.
Sure. So I don't know how impressive it was to start. I realized the importance of cash flow when I could no longer knock on businesses and I had to cold call, and the sales cycle was a lot longer. It was more of a national enterprise sale. So I said, okay, I'm running out of cash. I bootstrapped the company. I have to go, figure out a way to make ends meet. So I was doing all these random jobs, and they all helped to this day. I found the way to relate that to enterprise sales. One of them was getting dropped off in the middle of Phoenix at night with a strap on my shoulder, knocking on doors, trying to sell alarm systems. As it would get darker, I'd be the only one outside saying, I have to get in the house and actually sell this alarm. Otherwise, I'm going to be out in the middle of nowhere at night. So all those little experiences taught me many things about sales. Make a long story short, I ended up selling my business to my partner for a lot. But that experience got me my first real enterprise sales role at 23, 24 years old. I'm at the sales desk sitting next to mid-30s, 40s, 50-year-olds, right? But I had the raw talent. I just needed some structure. And luckily, I had great mentors that were willing to invest time into me to give me that corporate structure. Shout out to Chris Mezzatesta, Matt Kane, both came to my wedding, still close to them to this day. Shout out to Bill Hogan again. You mentioned Bill, another great mentor. Prior to starting the Top Academy, I was Senior VP of Sales at Security Scorecard, helped take them from 22 million to 100 million in ARR within 3 years under Bill Hogan's tutelage. So learned a tremendous amount from Bill. And I know Bill is, I think, your mentee, right? You mentored Bill.
Yes, back when he was a Cub Scout puppy.
So small world. And so he introduced me to you. So
awesome.
Yep.
And then now with top 1%er, tell us more about that.
So the top 1%er, and this goes to show you how open-minded Bill is. My CEO at the time, Alex Yampolsky at Security Scorecard. This was during COVID. I'm new at the job, running sales, and on the side, you have extra time during COVID. Tom Bocard and I said, hey, we want to do something a little bit different. There's all these salespeople are screaming to get coached, and they're not getting the proper coaching within their companies. Let's create a 12-week program where we could show up maybe 2 hours a week, but everything will be done online. We could gamify it. So that was essentially the start of the Top Academy, this 12-week program. Every week is a different lesson. It's a combination of not only sales, but meditation, exercise. After the 12 weeks, people look different. They sound different. They're a lot more confident in their sales skills. Individual sales reps were spending, and still are, $8,000 out of their own pockets just to go through this 12-week program. Over 80% of them throughout the 3+ years have made it to the top 1% in sales, either at their entire company, if it was a smaller startup, or within their department, if they worked for Salesforce, AWS, Twilio, right? So the formula works. It's the same formula that took me from a good salesperson to being a top salesperson globally at many different companies. Now we've taken that formula and we're now providing it to companies where we're training the trainer for their sales enablement team to run for their organizations. And still, the success has been phenomenal.
That's great. Any customer example you want to touch on?
Sure. So, and listen, we're not here to replace, I don't think we'll ever replace a force management. I hear them all over the place. Sandler, Challenger, the Challenger sales. Those are methodologies that we accelerate. We want to make sure that they're leveraging those sales methodologies and really using it in the field. So, for example, Exonius is one of our customers, probably one of the fastest growing tech companies in the world. I think they made it over 100 million in ARR within a couple of years. And still, that goes to show you the type of leaders, Nick, Dave, Jen, the type of leaders they have there, they're still not satisfied with the growth that they have. They invested in their sales team. So we just finished up their first cohort. I went around the room yesterday and I asked, okay, Travis, for example, what was one thing you got out of the academy that was a little unusual? And what Travis said was, being able to collaborate with my peers and getting to hear everyone go through the same exercises has been phenomenal, right? So sometimes everyone's in their own bubble. If you're the 1% who actually practices behind the scenes, you're doing it by yourself. You don't know how good that sounds compared to maybe the top person in your company or the top salesperson in your company. But everybody gets to hear everybody. You get to learn from everybody. That was Travis. I have many more. I don't want to go through it now, but I appreciate the softball you threw there.
Absolutely. So now on the title topic, talking about coaching, it seems, my perspective, I'm sure you're involved in agreement, was something that was always kind of lame. And then I think with COVID, it got just kind of worse and even lamer. What do you see as the coaching problem today?
I love when sales leaders say we have a coaching culture. I don't really know what that means. What I would think that means is that they like to coach their reps from time to time when the opportunity presents itself. It probably means that sales leaders believe that their sales reps are coachable, they're open to feedback, they have a growth mindset. Probably means that the company believes in sales training, they hire sales companies to come in from time to time. But what I think that really means when someone says that is that there's very little, what I'm seeing is there's very little consistent sales coaching going on, especially at scale. That's almost impossible until we came around. So, and it's not the sales leader's fault. The intention is there. It's just really hard to sales coach at scale for sales leaders and sales reps without taking them away from the field. So companies, they have great sales enablement teams. Some, but not all sales leaders are usually the best sales coaches. So there's a difference between sales enablement and sales skills coaching. But Randy, let me ask you, what's the number one priority for your sales leader?
Your number.
Your number. Hit your number. Number two priority, you have to make sure your roster is filled with people that are ideally fully ramped. And then if you have time, I'm going to go coach somebody. But everybody's at a different level. It's not like back in the day where I was driving around the Northeast with my sales leader riding shotgun in between meetings. Trust me, I was getting a ton of coaching, especially for things that I could be doing better. But I'll tell you, Randy, at Scorecard, Senior VP of Sales, I try to implement some of these things. And I would say, okay, we're launching a new product. Here's a talk track. Next 2 weeks, or in 2 weeks, when we have this meeting again, I want to hear everyone's talk track. Right. You get back on the call, it's like they completely miss the message. So, okay, I'll say it again. In 2 weeks again, we're going to have this. It's just a simple talk track about this new product. 2 weeks we get on the call. Again, it's like they completely forgot. But they've learned or they've listened to the message. They're just not taking the time to really go and practice that messaging. They have so many things going on. Right. So that takes a back seat. But what the Top Academy does is we make sure that they're doing the work, just like an athlete.
Great. So from a leader perspective, what's the best practice around kind of time that you would say they should spend coaching?
Time, that's a trick question, because I would go into a commercial about the Top Academy because that's one of our benefits and I don't want to do that. But the way we position the leaders is we take that off their plate. We allow their sales enablement team to do that for them. So now during their one-on-one, they're in tune with that same lingo. They already know which reps need a little more work in what areas. So part of their one-on-one, they're using that vocabulary to double click, and it should take 5 minutes. Right? Because all that work is being done and it doesn't sound like it's coming from left field. So now the rep doesn't have to feel paranoid that maybe they're not as good or their leader doesn't like them or they feel like they're being singled out. So that's a trick question, but in an ideal scenario, we feel like a sales leader should be spending a couple of minutes just double clicking.
Yeah. And I guess I am, again, maybe, old school, but it's kind of like, you always take the opportunity to be coaching, right? So if you're on a discussion, if it's a deal review, for sure, if it's a sales call, some of the things I'd always try and do if I went on a sales call and, you were the rep and I might think, okay, Randy's this big exec or whatever, but I always afterwards say, okay, do you have any feedback for me? And they'd be like, holy cow, I can't believe that, you're asking me for feedback, right? So they may or may not. And then that gives the entree to say, hey, can I give you some feedback? And they're like, okay, but by saying that, can I give you some feedback? Mentally, they're like, okay, I'm going to hear something. I may not like it, but I'm kind of ready. And that kind of helps to break the ice around, basically critiquing people, which sometimes people have a hard time doing, especially I think a lot of the tech West Coast companies that are kind of passive aggressive. So yep. I'd always oversteer to say, hey, we got to be doing this all the time as a culture, and nobody, the CEO down to, SDR, BDR should be open to the feedback. And then I could say, if I say, hey, Paul, can I give you some feedback?
Of course.
Right. You're kind of open. And then I'd say, hey, I always compliment, say, hey, I really liked you did this, and that, but then maybe here's some other things we could have done different or better, or you kind of went down that rat hole and then I kind of brought it back here, or they asked this and then you kind of totally avoided it, went somewhere else, kind of things like that. So I think that, from a just, kind of culture and mindset perspective is something that's just of huge value. What do you think?
Huge value. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, Randy. So picture your conversation to a group of people 2 hours a week, but now everybody feels comfortable because everybody's getting the same feedback. And now your feedback to Stacy, I'm learning from. And by the time it's my turn to go around, but it's a safe environment. So initially people are a little timid, but then they realize everybody's in the same boat. We're all trying to learn, and then it becomes acceptable. And then they start coming into their own.
Yep, absolutely. And then what about, there's obviously different people are different stages from a leader being comfortable with coaching on the one hand, but then also whether you've got a star or bottom performer. So everybody's kind of different sort of on the grid.
So that's the tough part. How do you, okay, so you have some of my top salespeople, they were at the top just by brute force. They outworked everybody. But as a senior VP of sales, there were areas where I could have coached, but it would have felt off for me to coach in that scenario. So that's the tough part. And you have somebody that's not doing as well. And if you coach a little too much, they're going to feel like they're doing even worse. Right. So I think having a safe environment where everyone's learning the same material and it kind of builds off of each other keeps everybody growing together. Right.
Totally. And I'm fine if I have any opinions you just disagree with, but a lot of people along the way I'd find would say, just kind of leave your top performers and spend your time coaching the bottom performers. And I would argue the opposite, which is you can get a lot better lift from coaching your top performers. So if you're a top performer, it's 150%. If you kind of coach them or develop them and they can get to 200%, helps them be more productive. And then, by the way, by retaining A players help recruit A players, right? If everybody's a B player, it's going to be hard. Everybody in the industry knows kind of who's who and what's what, right? If you got a bunch of B players, it's harder to bring in A players. What do you think?
Absolutely. And the beauty within that, there are a couple of things there. So the A player, they only need a couple of tweaks and then they get it. And when they get it, and they're going through the same motions, the B and C players are looking and saying, okay, if the A player is taking this very seriously, I'm going to work just as hard or not, if not harder. So they're setting a great example. They're already at the top of the leaderboard and they're still putting in the work to get just that 1% better, which sets the tone for the rest of the team. So yeah, I agree with you. I mean, if you can just increase your A players, that return is fantastic.
Awesome. And then what about your perspective on some of the tools like Gong and others?
I think Gong, hands down, is one of, if not the best sales tools I have ever used. And it's not just recording calls. And we're creating a sales leadership module here pretty soon, because when I talk to leaders, they're surprised with how many different things Gong can do beyond just recording calls. And I use that at my time at Scorecard and other companies to not so much take the rep's word, not ask, hey, what's going on with this deal? Anything you need help with? I'm jumping into strategic conversations right away. And I wasn't able to do that before Gong. But here's the thing. How many, when it comes to sales coaching, how many sales leaders, legitimate sales, top sales leaders are really spending time listening to Gong calls? Not many. They're listening to calls either after a call to see how the call went, how the rep did, maybe before their next big meeting, right? But for them to spend time listening, waiting for coaching moments, that's really tough. That's really, really tough.
Yeah, and also too with Gong, again, I'm old school, but just the notion of a recap letters. It seems like sales teams these days have lost any command for the English language. Don't do prompt recap notes and don't really capture everything. So it helps you kind of get the ball in the 50-yard line. And you wouldn't press send on what it gives you, but it's a pretty good recap to help kind of get there, which is real effective. Yeah. And then from a coaching perspective in some other areas, not just kind of what you mentioned, but also I'll make it up if I'm at Dell and you want to find out why are you winning against Pure, why you're losing against Pure, they can kind of capture some of those situational things, which then can get put into place right away. So it's just amazing going back to what we used to have, which was none of that. Now having this, but then really just making sure that the leaders, I guess number one, know how to do it. But then again, it's just kind of discipline in terms of taking the time to do it, right?
100%.
Interesting. Just so crazy there. And then anything else on the kind of coaching side to touch on here before we move on?
No, I see there's a question about.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, Michael. All right, Tucker, if we can pull that. And we have Tucker behind the scenes is always helping. So Tucker, thank you very much for your help. So Michael says, any thoughts about coaching coaches, teaching managers how to coach seems to be one of the hardest things to do.
So what we do is we have an exec summary at the Top Academy where we go through the exercises. So ideally, that foundational work is being done for the sales coaches, for the sales leaders. But now you're coaching the coaches based on the vocabulary, the lingo, what they were taught, and they know what to listen for. So now you're coaching them in a different way to say, okay, here's where they are. Here's how you continue to coach them based on just using key phrases, key terms. So you can pass the baton over to the coaches. I think that's a more effective way of doing it. Because everybody's speaking the same language now. Everybody's in the same, on the same team, listening to the same things. But that's the most effective way I have seen coaching coaches.
Great. And then from a, I'll say up or out perspective, right? So if you've got those bottom performers, one of the best practices I would use would be, again, which is, maybe awkward and, comes time of termination. And then half the time, leadership knows, or your, manager's manager, okay, this person's, kind of, for lack of a better word, is going to be fired. But then the paperwork is not usually always there, which is sloppy. So one of the things I'd always try and do is encourage people, if I'm picking on you, they say, Paul, we had this discussion, just, I'm going to make sure I'm going to put in writing, here's just some of the things that you need to do to improve. We've kind of had this discussion a lot, really haven't seen the results. So I'm going to put in writing something to you that say, as discussed, here's what you do well, here's things you need to improve on. And if you don't improve in these specific areas, anything can happen up to and including termination. And then what I find a lot of times by doing that, then all of a sudden, they kind of, wake up and I'm like, I don't know what's different from this discussion I had before. Well, you said I'm going to get fired now. I'm like, okay, well, duh. So what do you think about that?
That's a double-edged sword. I feel like it could work both ways. Depends on somebody's personality. To your point, it could wake somebody up, but then you wonder, you have a number, you're just as good as your last quarter. So you're in sales. You should have woken up a long time ago. And there are other people who will see that sort of performance improvement plan and just start interviewing and looking for the exit, right? So once you're at that point, it's a tricky situation. I don't know what the right answer is there. I feel like more people will start to hit the exits and put on a good face for a little bit of time.
Which, if you're on the company side, sometimes can be a good thing, right? I would say, some of the best things is if somebody wants to vote with their feet, then that kind of relieves me as the manager of kind of having to go through that time and effort and energy. And if it's a small company, kind of the severance payment, which could be vital, right? If they go on their own, that could help.
Yep.
So that, likewise could be a double edge the other way, right?
Yeah. And to your point initially, somebody does step up. That's great.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you mentioned Bill Hogan before. Anything more specific you want to say about him as a mentor or other mentors that you've had?
So I have so many great things to say about Bill. Bill, he's great with everyone he works with. But there were so many things behind the scenes that no one ever taught me too. Just the, looking at headcount, the numbers, how to run a business behind the scenes. And the thing about Bill that I enjoyed is you showed up, and I don't know how people didn't know the answers to his questions. He has the same 4 or 5 questions every meeting he had, right? So
all right, it's nice.
I was really prepared, right? I just had to know my numbers and my business. But if you know that, and he sees that you're working and putting in the work, he's going to invest time into you. But if you show up and you're scrambling or not sure of what the answer is, that's a problem, right? So very disciplined. And I think I grew up that way. My high school football coach is very disciplined, right? So it kind of gelled with my upbringing and personality.
Oh, great. And then another thing I was going to touch on before around the kind of development or termination aspect of things is you could have two different extremes, right? Somebody who gets a bluebird is not doing the right behaviors, and then you have somebody. So a bluebird is in maybe 200% a goal, and then you have somebody who's doing all the right behaviors. They might be 80 or 90%. I would still lean in and coach heavily that person that got the bluebird, because I'll say, yeah, you're about your numbers, but you don't have the right behaviors. So those are kind of two different ways that you can kind of coach and develop. What do you think?
And I think that's a perfect softball that I don't think you meant to do that, but we have optics into that at the Top Academy because we know their daily habits. Is somebody exercising every day? Are they meditating every day? And that tells us about somebody's discipline, how they're going about their day. When they weren't doing it before, we're laying out a plan. And now we see that they're doing that. There was somebody named Steve who went through the academy when our first cohort, and he was looking for a new job. I actually saw him every morning posting that he was, even in the rain, didn't matter what the weather was, he was taking pictures of running by a gas station that wasn't even lit up yet. And I was like, this guy's work ethic is awesome. He doesn't sound as polished as everyone else, but I know he's going to put in the work. We hired him. It took him a lot longer to ramp up than most other reps. There was a moment in time where we could have parted ways, but I said, this guy will figure it out. I know he puts in the work. Fast forward 2 years later, he's one of the top reps. He's still there, one of the top reps at the company. Just took him a little bit of time, but without those optics, it was a crapshoot.
Yep, absolutely. Great example for sure. And a lot to be said for work ethic. How do you find the work ethic? Again, I'll say old school, but kind of these days it seems from a lot of CRO friends I talked to has kind of fallen off, and also a tough thing to lean on from a coaching perspective.
The work ethic. Can you rephrase it?
Yeah. So the work ethic, I would argue, is, from what I hear of CRO friends, is kind of less than what it used to be. And then also culturally, it's difficult now versus what it used to be able to talk about that, saying, hey, you got to be working more.
I mean, look at, let's go bring it back to high school football coaching, or even coaching in general, any sport. It's becoming difficult. Everyone's so sensitive, what to say, what not to say. I don't even think, we used to do doubles or triples. I don't even think you can have a kid run around the field if they show up late. So that's a bigger issue. And that's one of the things that we work on. So if you're not showing up prepared, that's obvious. So you're almost putting pressure on the rep in front of their peers to show up prepared. Otherwise, they won't look the best, right? So it almost forces them to step up. And that's one great thing that we do is not everyone's going to be like that. You give someone a platform, a challenge, many people are going to rise up to the occasion. That's not the time to slack. And ideally, you're doing that for 3 months. That becomes a new discipline, a new habit.
Absolutely. And if you take a look at there's probably 20 to 50 different attributes of things that you really want to coach for. If you kind of had a laundry list, what do you find are maybe the top 2 or 3 things that really need the most improvement and can really move the needle the most in somebody's output?
That's a great question. It's tough to coach for this, but resilience, mindset. So that's what I love about sales. You work with a sales leader or a sales rep on a deal that's going sideways. One of our deals is $12 million. It was supposed to close on a Friday. On a Wednesday, one of my VPs tells me that it's not coming in. There's no way it's happening. I don't accept that answer. There's still 2 days left. There's ways where we could get creative. And you can tell in that moment when that other person on the other side has that same mentality and will work with you to figure that out. And we ended up getting the deal done within those 2 days. Or I've seen other salespeople who just start pointing fingers. And that's tough to interview for. That's tough to coach. But that's still something that you can help somebody work on.
Right.
What's their self-talk? What's their discipline?
Yep.
Have them prepared for things not going well. That's just part of life. So when things don't go well, one of the things I say, like right now, I could have a family member that's in a coma. I could have things that are going on in my life, and you would have no idea because I truly believe in the perfect outcome of every situation. I just know it's one moment in time that's leading me to a better moment in time because I've prepared myself for those moments in time.
Absolutely. I violent agreement. I'd always say, how you doing? Right? Okay, or good, or whatever. Like, no, it's great. Right? Great. Especially if you're face to face, your handshake, I'm doing great, positive, right? Somebody that you're selling to, they want to be with the winner. They don't want to be with some, mope, right?
Right.
Which is amazing. How many times, and, even with, I'll talk to some student groups or, where they're kind of different executive people. I mean, half the time the handshakes are just so lame. And like, okay, that's the first domino in terms of what somebody's going to judge a book by your cover, right? Eventually you got to be, kind of have your act together, but it's like, that's the first thing, right? So you want to get out of the starting gate strong. And so many times just that, kind of just, mopey lameness is just such a bad way to get started.
And do you want to buy from somebody that's just trying to sell to save their job? Or do you want to buy from somebody that's about to hit their annual quota in Q2 for the 4th year in a row? I want to be with winners. Buyers want to be with winners. That's a reflection of their company. So when you have your entire sales team showing up with that attitude, it makes a huge difference.
Genuine, sincere, authentic. For sure. And we have Humantic AI that has is kind of the old disc profile system, but on steroids and automated, and you can go into your LinkedIn and kind of match up the profile and how you are. So for me, I might be hard charging. So then if there's somebody that's kind of not that way, then I have to intentionally kind of take it easy and kind of slow down. Do you get involved in any of the kind of personality profiling or have any thoughts around that?
I'm very familiar with Humantic. Excellent job you should be doing that as a sales rep in general, but it just makes it a lot easier using Humantic. And you have to know who you're talking to. Before, it would take a couple of minutes to figure out, okay, what's this person's personality like? But you don't need to waste those minutes. You could, right out of the gates, to your point, know who you're talking to.
Yeah, there's so much you can do with kind of research beforehand here. And speaking of the man, so Bill Hogan says sales leaders should be flocking to Paul to outsource or augment their sales skill set development needs. So pretty good shout out there. I think he is flying back from Black Hat. So Bill, don't forget you said you're going to call me later. Anyway, now moving on here, kind of on the sales tool side, you mentioned Gong. Anything else that you're passionate about or recommend?
Clary, and I know Gong has a forecasting module now to kind of rival Clary, but I always used Clary with Gong. I know things I used to do within Clary, within the forecast, you'd see all the deals that were in for the quarter. What I'd do with my sales leaders to say, okay, how many of these deals actually have legs? You don't have to forecast. Don't worry about me holding your feet to the fire. But how many of these deals really have legs? And then I'd star all those deals. So now I can see what the entire universe is for the quarter. And that gives me a realistic snapshot of, okay, do I really have 2X, 3X? So if I was hovering around my number with the total universe of deals out there, I knew that we had to go start pulling some opportunities from the future quarter, right? So there's so many things you could do with Clary, and I believe Gong has a lot of the same features.
Yep, Gong, Clary, Aviso, also his other ones. But again, just amazing these tools. And I think back to the old days when we had kind of the spreadsheet. I mean, just automating all this is just crazy.
It is awesome. So I used to my best expect worst. It used to be down to the penny, depending on what right. Deals would slip in and slip out.
Yeah, totally. Really, really cool. So we're getting toward the end here. So anybody watching or listening, feel free to chime in with any other comments or questions. So on the sales skill side from a rep, also it seems like cold calling is kind of a lost art. Oh, I don't like to do that. I don't want to do it. We all grew up. That was the kind of first domino in sales. What do you see out there?
I see tools, going back to tools like Orem, O-R-U-M, being a game changer. Parallel dials, your connection rate is through the roof. I used to be so confident that when someone would pick up the phone, I would have a very good shot at setting a meeting if it was the right level person. The problem is you would go days without somebody picking up the phone. Now you have a lot of connects using those parallel dialers for people to connect. And the great thing about cold calling is it gives you an immediate feedback loop. So when you get hung up on, what did I say there that was so awful? Many times I know I sounded awful. So how can I go back to the drawing board and sound a little bit better? If I was on the other side and I cold called myself, what about what I just said made me hang up on myself? How do I not sound like a telemarketer, right? So it gives you great perspective, a great feedback loop. And you take that discipline as you start to evolve your sales career and you use it across every part of the sales cycle. I think cold calling is great.
Awesome. We have one of the sponsors, Sales Community Phone Ready Leads, has a cool swizzle, as I call it. I mean, typically the pickup rates when you do cold calling is like 3 or 5%. And when you use them, they're able to kind of figure out who has a higher propensity to pick up the phone, and it increases to more like 25 or 30%. So you think about being able to get an uptick of kind of 5 to 10x the number of people that are picking up the phone. It's crazy, and having some great results with people like Workday, Hitachi, CPP, E360, a whole bunch of folks for sure. And then as you're looking at the sales organizations these days, a lot of people, you're talking about, Orem from the parallel dialer, which is great, but then the whole kind of notion of, kind of outsourcing, right? So SDR, again, I'm old school, right? So I would never outsource SDR, BDR group. I'd want to have it, on our own, because there's nobody like your own, and you can use that as a development path. What do you see, or what do you feel?
I agree with you. I think it's becoming harder. Even though I like cold calling, it's becoming a lot harder to cold call. So I think it's good to have everybody in-house sharing best practices, understanding, okay, if cold calling isn't great right now, what else are we doing? What's working? What's not? There's so many new approaches out there using a combination of LinkedIn, Sales Navigator, LinkedIn, and cold calling, but it's great, and that's a part of my business that I'm looking to improve, because when we talk to CROs at companies that are about 75 million to over $500 million in ARR, they get it. They get it right away. The question is, how do I get in front of more of those CROs?
There you go. And what about the importance of the value of relationships these days in the selling process?
I think because it's harder to get people to pick up the phone, a lot of our and many other companies are tapping into the network. And someone like you, Randy, that's how we met, right? With Bill, we sat down with you And I was like, holy shit, how many people does this guy know? Who is this guy? And you knew everybody, right? So every C-level, and it was great. So having more Randys out there makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I don't know. For sure, not everybody. And I was looking at my thing, Yeti here. And did you ever meet Dave Knorr?
Oh yeah,
Dave Knorr, yep. So Abnir, I guess this is Abnir Relationship Bank, but shout out. He's got he's probably the PhD on kind of relationships and several books written, and he's got an automated tool now, which next time, Tucker, we should have a link that we can put on there. But again, it seems like something, pre-COVID, relationships was kind of on the top 10 list of things that you do. And now with Zoom and people almost being afraid or not wanting to do face-to-face sales calls, kind of that whole relationship thing kind of is starting to get lost. Ken Doherty, who's a good friend at Dell, says, know me, like me, trust me, right?
Yep.
So, when things get tough, are you there for people? It's not just trying to sell to them, but having that relationship. And then if the person moves on from somewhere else to somewhere else, great. Are they, going to, get that meeting with you because you have some fancy business card from a big company, or if you're at some startup, are they going to meet with you, right?
So Noor was my executive coach. Noor came onto my podcast, which, by the way, Randy, you still have not come onto my podcast. So let's do a home and home.
All right.
Let's do a home and home.
Yeah.
And then Noor also showed me the technology. I thought it was fantastic because it really flushes out. Okay, you have 1 million LinkedIn connections. Do you really know this person? How well do you know this person? And maybe you had a great connection with this person, but when was the last time you truly reached out? So it kind of reminds you to keep those connections tight.
Yeah, absolutely. So time flies here when you're having fun. So at the end, I always like to ask for people that know me from maybe a Randy story perspective, if there's any PG ones you want to share.
So let me think about this. I think it was 2 years ago now. We went to your house at Beaver Creek. You had the executive summit, right? And I'm not the best skier. I gave it a shot to go with the advanced group, and I quickly realized I was nowhere near advanced. But you are very advanced, right? You've been skiing your whole life. You're very good. You ski backwards, and I don't even know how that's possible. But you, even though we're hosting the event, you took the time to help out my dear friend and co-founder, Tom Bocard, who has never skied before, maybe one time.
What was a train wreck?
It wasn't though, right? So it was either you were a great instructor or he's a phenomenal athlete too. So maybe it was a combination of the two. So I ended up meeting you and Tom, and I was watching you help Tom, and Tom was doing great, but I respected you because your entire event was going on, but you're spending time and being so patient with Tom. I said, that's a leader, man. This guy is a leader, and I respected that.
Well, thanks. I was get frustrated. Because I'll take a lesson. I was like, give me a morning with you. I'll get you going. The lesson people take you a few days. So
you got him.
I appreciate that. And then, by the way, Amar Preet from Humantech was whole different story. But
he may remove the sponsorship now.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, Tucker, thanks for your help behind the scenes. Again, for those that are member sales community, thanks. And Tucker, if you want to put a link up for the book, I've got a book called Your Go-To Sales Advisor that did during COVID. That was great. Upcoming guests that we have, Dave Kronk, who's SVP at Tricentis. Title topic there is building and running international sales. And then speaking of Tom Bocard, coincidentally, we have him August 21st, and his title topic is selling to net new accounts and markets. So everybody, thanks so much. Paul, you've been awesome. Everybody have a great rest of the week, and good luck selling more.